There you go.
Alright. Hi, welcome to PSE Live Down to the Wire. This is our very first show, and today we'll be doing a season preview on the Eastern Conference. And I'm joined by NBA writer Cameron Curtis. If you please introduce yourself.
Cameron's just an old guy. Usually got a lot to say, a lot of opinions. I write for you guys at PSE. I also write for Above the Rim. It's an Australian NBA site down under. Been writing now for about 2 years and always got an opinion.
And if you remember from our earlier shows, my name is Anthony Gross, and I'm the Vice President of Operations at PSE. And today, the way we're going to start out is we're going to start out making our predictions for each division in the Eastern Conference. And Cameron, if you want, we can start out with the Atlantic division, and we can see who you think is going to place in that division.
Okay, the Atlantic, I mean, as far as like who's taking it, I mean, hands down, I've got Toronto. They're returning the best backcourt in the East. Yeah, they're not talked about enough with DeRozan and Lowry. You're going to get what you're going to get. They're going to put points on the board. They're going to keep coming at you. I like a lot. I'm a real big fan. Not enough people are talking about this, about what they've done with the bench, bringing James Johnson, Lou Williams. Trying to think. Let's see. James Johnson, Lou Williams. Patterson comes back. Patterson stayed fairly healthy last year. And then, of course, Vasquez re-upped. Kind of lost in the mix there is Terrence Ross. I feel like it's kind of an unfortunate thing. He's their third best perimeter player, and he's kind of an afterthought, and all he is more he's a fantastic athlete, but the thing is he's more or less a spot-up three-point shooter because he feeds off the drives from Lowry and DeRozan so much. Then your bigs, you got Johnson, Valanciunas. Another unfortunate thing, Valanciunas, I think he could be a lot better, and that's not on him. It's on the teammates. It's just that it's such a perimeter-oriented team. I don't think he gets enough touches. And he's good. He's big. He's put on a lot of size since coming in the league over from Lithuania. I think if he can really solidify himself on the post, that it can even make him better as far as the team goes. But I'd like to see him feed him more than – they tend to feed him just in the first and the third at the beginning of the quarters, and then they go away from it. It's kind of maddening. As a fan, you're like, it's working. Why go away from it? But hopefully they're a year better. They figure it out. I expect good things from them. And I'm telling you, the bench depth is very, very underrated. And if they stay healthy, they're running away with the division, bottom line.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, as far as talent goes, Toronto's the cream of the crop in that division. And obviously, as we can suspect, that Philadelphia is going to finish last as they're going to go through another year of tanking.
So can't stand it.
Same. As a competitor, Amy hates it, but I mean, hey, if that's what they want to do, then hey, I mean, they can do it. And the tricky teams in this division is Brooklyn and New York. With Brooklyn, if they're healthy, they can make a run at winning that division. It all depends on the health of Brook Lopez and Deron Williams, because I don't think Deron Williams is going to return to the all-star level that he was in Utah, but I do think he can contribute about 17 points and maybe 7 assists, somewhere in that ballpark. And with New York, we're still waiting to see and how Melo does in the triangle offense, and whether or not they have the pieces to make it successful. And Boston, they're just there. I mean, there's rumors that Rondo could be gone, and maybe have Marcus Smart step into his place and be the future of the team along with James Young, amongst others. And, this division is really – it's going to be tricky because there's 3 teams that could win it, and then you have your bottom feeders.
Yeah, I don't know. I was taking a closer look at it. I'd say out of the 3 divisions, this is the one – outside, I know Toronto's team really – pretty well because I watched them quite a bit last year, and I won't lie, I kind of have an affinity towards them. But bottom line, I think they're head and shoulders above everybody. Carmelo, yes, he's the most dynamic player in the division. There's no doubt about that. He's going to get his 28. He's going to get his 30. Even though he's saying he's not looking to score as much out of the triangle, he's going to get his opportunities. It's just how the guy plays. He gets his buckets. I don't. New York's got an interesting mix. Definitely upgraded point guard with Calderon as opposed to Felton. I'd like to see Hardaway start. Shump, Knicks have always been on the fence with Shump. You always hear his name and trade, rumors. He never ends up going anywhere. Stoudemire, can he bounce back? There's so many ifs with these guys. Dallenberg comes in. That's a downgrade from Chandler, even though Chandler wasn't healthy. Bargnani, I mean, can he at least give him like 14 and 6 and act like he's halfway interested in defense? I don't know. And J.R. Smith, can he keep his head about himself? It's maddening because I'll be dead honest with you. Obviously, I'm a Bulls fan, but 2 years ago when I think he was going in his free agent year, I was calling for him because that's where we struggled the most was we didn't have a two that could create. And JR is a fantastic athlete. I mean, obviously can create a shot, can play above the rim. You just got to worry about where his head's at all the time, So wasting too much time on time people should just, come on, play the game, dude. That kind of stuff just drives me nuts. But I think the Knicks are better than the Nets. And like I said, I was looking at this more, and I'm telling you, you may think this is crazy. I know there's all the Rondo rumors, and I really thought there was something to the whole Sacramento get-up this year. I really thought he was headed out west. A lot of people were saying he was going to end up there before Christmas. But I think it's kind of cooled off. But Ainge is doing all the politic things. He's saying the right things, Oh, we're not dealing, blah, blah, blah. Bull. They're looking to deal him, trust me. Anyways, but I almost think this is going to sound crazy, but I think Boston – might have a shot at being a little bit better in Brooklyn. I keep looking at that Brooklyn lineup, and it all, like you said, it all hinges on Lopez. If Lopez is healthy, it changes everything. But I don't know. Garnett, I mean, come on. Garnett should have been done 2 years ago. Joe Johnson, it kills me because he dominates some games and always in the clutch. He's fantastic in the clutch. But then, he'll drop 25, 26 2 games early, and then he gives you a 6 and a 7. I don't understand it. It drives me nuts. I don't get it. Teletovic will be good. He'll put up some numbers. He could score 12, 14 points a game for him. It's whether or not him or Bogdanovich start at the 3. Then you kind of got a mix of characters on the bench. They lost a lot, though. You got to realize how much they lost. That's what was kind of bothering me when I was looking at it a little bit closer. Blatch is gone. He's a matchup problem as a big off the bench. Pierce is gone. Obviously, he's in Washington. And Livingston, he's out west now. They did bring in Jarrett Jack, who is a really good combo guard, who isn't scared of the big moment. You bring back Kirilenko, who's had his health issues. That bench, I just don't know what to think of. If Lopez isn't healthy, I like Plumlee stepping in. I like what he brings to the table. He obviously does something right if he can make the Team USA roster. But there's too many ifs on that lineup for me. Where you look at Boston, minus Rondo, Rondo hasn't been the same for years. Maybe we have seen his best, but he's a floor general, and one of the best still. Bradley, I like Bradley a lot. Great perimeter defender. He can score a little bit. I could see him easily scoring like 15, 16 a game again. Jeff Green, man, what an athlete. But another one of those guys that just leaves you wondering, what else has he got? Because he's just so inconsistent. Doesn't rebound well either. Less than 5 rebounds a game. Solinger, I love him. I've drafted him in several fantasy leagues. He is like the generic Kevin Love. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but he's a stretch 4. They developed him into it. Great rebounder. It's a dialed down generic Kevin Love, but it's something there. It's kind of a similar skill set, just not as athletic as Love, obviously. They got some interesting parts on the bench, like you said, Marcus Smart. You wonder whether or not the Rondo deal is going to go down. I still think it does. I don't know where. I really thought he was headed to Sacramento. And as far as Philadelphia, I mean, seriously, I sat down and tried to pin all the lineups in the whole league, all 30 teams. That is the only team I struggled and had to research. No joke. Jay Rich was coming back. He's in a boot now. Tony Roden, I like Tony Roden. He's exciting, but he's always out of control. MCW is coming back. He'll be back sooner than people think. It's looking like in the next 2 weeks. He's gonna fill the stat sheet. But there are a lot of rumors that they were shopping him this offseason too, that they're not exactly sold on him. I guess one thing you've got to look forward to, if anything, is Noel coming in. What is he going to be able to do? Yeah, he's got to put on some size, but he's like a pogo stick, man. Offensively, he's raw, but he's so athletic. He's gonna get his points here and there. I see him as maybe a 10, 12 points a game, 8 rebounds, couple blocks. Decent numbers, but it's going to be a learning curve. He's very raw, and everybody knew that when he was coming out of Kentucky. I really wish Embiid was healthy, but that's not the case. So we got to deal with Henry Sims again. So a household name like that. But it's Toronto and everybody else. The Knicks and then the Nets and Boston. I'm kind of on the fence about Boston being better than Brooklyn. I'm just not feeling Brooklyn, man. I don't know what it is. If it's just too many people on the downside of their careers and too many injury questions. And then Philly. Philly's just scourge of the league. That's a given. So another horrible year. So which I hate, and we can't do anything about it because they did not pass the whole tanking ordeal here a few weeks back. So it is what it is. So, anyways, didn't mean to go on too much. I mean, is there anything you want to spin off of that, or?
I was gonna say with going back to New York, I think they definitely upgraded in the point guard position. I mean, anybody's an upgrade from Raymond Fountain. That was just a mess last year with his legal troubles. He wasn't performing on the court. That was just a mess. So having Calderon he's more than capable of running an offense. I mean, that's really his specialty. He can move the ball around. He's an underrated defender, in my opinion. He can shoot the ball a little bit, and I think
he can shoot the ball a lot.
Yeah,
he's an excellent shooter. He's he's like another comparison for you. Bear with me. He's like a very watered down Steve Nash. He's not going to be hold on with me. He's not a great defender, probably a better defender than Nash, let's be serious. But he's going to get all his teammates involved. He's going to be very efficient, and he's going to take good shots. He doesn't make a lot of bad decisions, whether it be passing the ball, handling the ball, or shooting the ball. You know what you're going to get. You're going to get an efficient point guard. You're going to get a game manager. He's going to set up the other guys. He's going to make them better. It's just New York's got a lot of wild cards too. Bargnani, J.R. Smith. How much better can Hardaway be? Now they're saying, recently I heard in the last week that they're talking about starting Quincy Acey at the 4, which is kind of contradictory because Stoudemire just came out 2 weeks ago, said he had no restrictions, he was ready to roll. So typical New York stuff. You just never know what's going on.
Yeah, I think with the lineup of a Calderon, a Shumpert, or Hardaway, I mean, whoever they decide to put at the 2, Melo, Amari, and either Dunbar and Bargnani, that's not too bad at all. It's actually a decent lineup. I mean, Calderon can take care of the ball, so you're not going to have to worry about turnovers. And if they do have a little bit of trouble turning the ball over, the great thing about the triangle offense is that it's a sign for a team to get back in defense, to get back in transition efficiently. That's one of the main things for the triangle, turning offense to defense or vice versa. And with Hardaway, he showed some flashes last year. I think he can take the next level and being a decent player and providing some minutes off the bench. And with the J.R. Smith, like you said, if he can keep his head straight and play smart, it only makes them that much better. Especially since he provides that energy off the bench, and they brought in a Cole Aldridge who isn't a household name, but he can give you 10, 15 minutes.
He's a space eater. Everybody needs a space eater.
Yeah, and Shane Larkin, I mean, he can prove to be a decent player in the league out of Miami, and Clay Anthony Early. I mean, he was drafted. I think he has the potential of being a good player in the league.
They were pretty high on him. There was a lot of talk about him in the summer about what kind of athlete he was. My concern with Larkin, he himself is a great athlete as well. It's just his size. When the average guy in the NBA is 6'7", and he's lucky if he's pushing 5'11", boy, that's a pretty rough gig.
Yeah.
So.
And And with Philadelphia, they're going to be dangerous in about 3 or 5 years. That's going to be a dangerous team. You have a front court of a Joel Embiid and Nerlens Noel. It can't get much better than that.
Oh, it's going to be good. I'd say seriously for them to make like the quantum leap. I mean, it's going to be a work in progress. You can throw this year out the window, but I'd say 3 years. I'd say 3 years. We're looking at something. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not sure that MCW is there. If he has another good year, his trade value just skyrocket a little bit more. So it's just whether or not how they want to flip that, for pieces for the future. Who knows? Who knows what's going on there?
Yeah, and they still have to, because if they do decide to do something with MCW, what are they going to flip for that? Are they looking to get another guard or picks? I mean, that's one of the big questions to me. If they are going to move MCW, and if they do keep him, how are they going to go about in the draft? Are they going to go for a forward, or are they going for somebody that can complement MCW in the backcourt? I mean,
Well,
it's just,
how much you asked too? How much faith do they have in Tony Roden? Tony Roden's a pretty dynamic athlete, man. He's good off the dribble. He's young and he forces things, but he's athletic, man. He can attack you off the dribble. He can fill it up. Doesn't take the best shots, but you know what? That's part of the learning process in the league, and all these guys are in warp speed in the learning process because they're so watered down compared to the rest of the league, experience-wise and, overall skill-wise as a team. So it's kind of a trial by fire. He got about 13 a game last year. I'd expect the same this year, maybe even more. But not a whole lot to work with there, and they can pretty much plan on being the bottom of the conference for a good year or two.
yeah, I thought considering the situation he was in last year, I thought he did a really good job providing, some sort of offense. I mean, because their situation last year was pretty bad. I mean, they went a stretch, what, a 20-game losing streak or something like that?
26. I think
Yeah,
it's 26 in a row. The 26ers, baby. Yeah, it wasn't pretty, man. And
no,
who did they end up beating? They didn't beat the
Detroit.
Bulls, did they? Oh,
Maybe
thank
Detroit.
God. I thought it was going to be the Bulls. I know the Bulls were coming up on the schedule, and I was like, this is the perfect trap game, and I wouldn't hear the end of it for a month. I can't have that.
Yeah, and I remember, a lot of times you hear players saying that they hate playing teams that are on losing streaks like that because they don't want to be the team to lose, and that losing streak, or so to speak. A lot of players say that around the league, and I can't blame them. I mean, that's what you would call a trap game. You just
Sure.
don't. I mean, and unfortunately, the Pistons. I'm not really surprised because there's a Pistons. I mean, they've been since the trade of Billups, they've really gone downhill. I thought the way Joe Dumars went about the rebuilding process wasn't the right way. Signing Ben Gordon and Charlie Villanueva to those huge deals. I thought that was the wrong way in going about the rebuilding process, and that set the franchise back about 5 years.
Yeah, it hamstrung them financially, and they both, come on, they had both seen better days, and I mean, were they worth that money in the first place? No. It's amazing that they both still got jobs in the league. They barely get off the bench as is, but yeah, it was a bad deal. Joe D stepped down. I mean, he resigned, but you can be fairly certain that he was going to get fired if he didn't. So. Too many bad decisions. So it looks like things are heading in the right direction there. They've got a great head coach in now, and we'll see if he can't build Orlando 2.0 there and see where they go from there around Drummond.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting to see him bring a Greg Monroe off the bench and have Smith playing at the 4 and then starting Cal Singler at the 3. I thought that was really interesting. So I figured that they would have moved one of the two, either Smith or Monroe in the offseason. I thought one was going to move.
Once again, I think they were trying to. I think they were fishing. I think they were throwing both names out. I think even more so. Excuse me. I think even more so. Josh Smith there for a while. I think once again there was some Sacramento rumors. But if you move him back to the 4, you limit the shots he can take from the perimeter. I want to say he shot something like 26% from 3. He shouldn't be putting up more than 33s a year, and that's probably stretching it. He's at his best on the block and slashing. You know, the guy's a great athlete. It's just you got to question where his head's at. He's one of those dudes, but he's so athletic. He makes up for it. I mean, he's a plus defender. He gets blocks. He gets steals. He's bad. He's a tough matchup every night for whoever's playing the four because of his mobility. You know, it seems like he's been in the league forever, but gosh, the guy's only, I think, 27, 28 years old. He came straight out of high school. But, you know, you look at it on the flip side, too, though, you know, is the guy ever going to get it at this point? You know, he's been in the league for, 8, 9 years, and it's still the same bad habits. You know, I'd heard stories about how, you know, the Atlanta coaches just were tired of him. They just tuned him out. They'd had it. They were ready for him to leave. Even the fans were tired of his act, you know. So hopefully, you know, hopefully he can straighten it out. You know, something's got to give because the three-headed monster didn't work. You know, there's just not enough space, and in order to make the space, Smith would get pushed out to the perimeter, and obviously that's just not what he's good at.
Yeah, and I think, you know, speaking of the Pistons, I have them finishing third in the Central behind Chicago and Cleveland. And then following Detroit, I have Indiana and Milwaukee. I think with Chicago, they have the chemistry to outperform Cleveland this year because I believe that Cleveland, they're going to have chemistry issues coming out the gate, you know, kind of similar to what Miami had in 2010 when you had the big three, you know, the first time playing together. So I think they're going to come out slow out the gate, and they're obviously I believe they're going to get it together. They're going to, you know, put up some wins. But I think Chicago are just going to be more consistent over the course of the year. And with Detroit, I just think, you know, I'm interested to see what Van Gundy does with this team, you know, and I have a lot of questions about the Pistons. You know, can Brandon Jennings play smarter? Because he's another player who makes a lot of bad shots. You know, he shoots the offense out of rhythm, and that's always been my biggest knock on him. Because if he can figure out that he shouldn't be shooting the ball, it makes his team better. Because he's a good passer. I mean, he can distribute the ball. His issue is that he's trigger happy. And defensively, he's not bad. I've seen worse, and, you know, he's capable of staying in front of his man. And with Indiana, I think losing Paul George and Lance Stevenson that was the worst thing that happened to them. The worst thing. Because I can imagine that Larry Bird didn't expect Paul George to go down the way he did over the course of the summer. I don't think anybody expected that. I mean, that was just awful. And, you know, with Stevenson, I mean, I don't think Bird wanted to overpay for Stevenson because I always thought they shouldn't pay no more than $8 million for Stevenson. That was kind of like around the range that he should have been paid at, and he got more in Charlotte. So I mean, I can't fault him for that.
He didn't get much more though. I think it was somewhere around 9. Ironically, I was having a conversation about that earlier today with a Pacer fan. He's pretty low to the ground. He reads a lot on him. He's a local friend of mine, and he had said that, and I had never heard this, that the whole Stevenson situation, supposedly, it materialized pretty quickly because the Pacers kind of put a deadline on him, supposedly, like time-wise, as to whether, you know, he was going to sign or not, which reminds you of what? The Harden situation in Oklahoma City. You know, that was a total botched deal. You know, I'm not the biggest Harden fan, but let's be serious. You know, he's one of the top 4 or 5 offensive players in the league. I mean, it's just a fact. You know, how much could they use him now, you know, especially with KD out. But, I mean, it is what it is. He's in Houston now. But the point is you know, these deadlines get put. Decisions have to be made. Now Lance is out in Charlotte, and we'll see how that shakes down. That should make for an interesting story as is. But, yeah, Indiana is decimated, man. They're going to need career years out of a couple guys they brought in. Stuckey's probably going to move to the 2. You know, he's your classic combo guard, which, ironically, he's in the same backcourt as a guy that's kind of the same thing. George Hill's a combo guard, playing point guard when he's probably more of a 2. But George Hill really should be a good 6-man on a really good team. But Hill, I was really digging into his numbers. His production went down quite a bit last year, but there's good reason behind it. And about halfway through the season, you heard a lot of rumblings about the selfish issue. And I think that was Hibbert that came out in the media He's never shy about quoting, especially when he's a little bit grumpy. But he was taking a shot at Paul George. And anyways, the whole George Hill deal, was he playing the Good Samaritan? Was he playing the good soldier? He was taking 3.5 shots less a game. Was he just being, your run-of-the-mill game manager? Never really can develop much of a rhythm if you're not taking shots. His points per game went down 3, 4. So he's going to have to step up. Let's see. Copeland's going to have to step in. I think he's probably going to be the starting 3. He shot the ball really well this preseason. I think I saw he was 14 for 21 from 3. That'll get it done. That'll keep the floor stretched. David West, 34 years old, 33 years old. You're looking for a career year in him. It's going to have to be if they're going to make the playoffs. I don't see it happening. What I do see happening is if the ship goes down. I know West, I think off the top of my head, I think he's making 12 a year. He's got 2 years left. I can see them maybe trying to mercenary him off. Maybe somebody needs a front court guy, maybe somebody like OKC. I don't know. Depending on how Adams develops. But anyways, David West is a player that playoff teams, if they have a void, they would look into if he was available. The whole Roy Hibbert thing, I mean, it's just maddening. I laugh about it. I say all the time he's the world's biggest invisible man. The guy is 7'2", and he doesn't know it. I mean, It's just it's mind-boggling. They play the Heat, and he plays like an MVP every night. But he goes out and he puts up donuts, a game or 2 in a row, and has his head in his hands and looks like somebody ran over his dog. I mean, it's just depressing. I mean, come on, man.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of question marks, and then you can't outrun the fact that they don't have Lance and Paul George is down. Paul George is in the mix, sure. It's a playoff team.
Mm-hmm.
Best case scenario, they sneak in the back door, but probably not likely. Probably not going to happen. I would recommend. I would think that I'd be looking to do some sort of a rebuild on the fly. Come back a little bit younger when George is ready to go next year. We'll see.
Yeah, and going back to Roy Hibbert, I was really disappointed in how he played down the stretch last season because I caught myself prisoner of the moment, and I was vouching for him to be one of the best big men in the league. Due to his performance at the time, and then he laid an egg in the second half. The whole team did really. I mean, nobody, was enthusiastic about playing. I mean, really the only one was Lance Stevenson and Paul George. I mean, Roy Hibbert, he was putting up Kwame Brown numbers. That's how bad he was. Actually, I think Kwame Brown's numbers were better than his numbers last year down the stretch.
Yeah.
And that's probably. And with Hibbert, he's not athletic, and I think he showed that last year. He's not athletic at all. He's slow-footed. He really can't jump. He's strong. That just about it. But he's skilled in the post. He can. I mean, he has a post move he can go to, and then he has that Georgetown post hook that he does. I mean, he's a good defender. I mean, he's
he'll eat some space. I mean, he'll deter some people around the hole, but can he stay out of foul trouble?
Yeah.
That you have to throw in the fact, the whole. It was kind of a buzzword there a couple years ago. The whole verticality rule. They're not letting him get away with it as much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as him on the block, man, it's just with his back to the basket, he's tough to watch, man. I know he's got that little 8 to 10 to maybe even 12 if you really stretch, turn around over the shoulder hook, but it's not a given. It's not very poetic to watch, and it's not a sure thing in the first. He does have that nice 15 to 18 footer every now and then, but the guy is 7'2". Get around the block, Space. I mean, he'll deter some people around the hole, but can't stay out of foul trouble.
Yeah.
That you have to throw in the fact, Anyways,
okay.
I was talking to myself, but yeah. I mean, there's just once again too many ifs there. I'd like to see Luis Scola and C.J. Watson step up a little bit off the bench. They're gonna have to.
Yeah.
School is better than what we've seen. Maybe this allows him to play a little bit more, minutes-wise. But just too much decimation there. I don't see Indy making the playoffs at all, and they'll be a step above Milwaukee in the bottom of the Central Division.
Yeah, and with the Milwaukee, I like what they did in the offseason. I thought adding guy Jabari Parker was huge. I mean, you pair him with the Greek Freak, and that should duo for the future. I mean, I loved what I saw from the Greek Freak last year. I mean, I loved his game. He's uber athletic. He's long, really long, and I mean, he can guard. He can shoot the ball. He does just about everything. He can pass, and he's one of those players that you need, especially since if you have a player like Jabari who's going to be your franchise player for the future. And then I mean I love what I saw from them this offseason and a little bit from last season, but I think they are the worst team still in the Central, and I don't see them doing much this year. But if they can add a few more pieces over the next couple of years, I mean they're going to be a team that we're going to talk about along with Philadelphia.
Oh yeah, I mean Milwaukee's on the come up. I like the Greek Freak. I'm not exactly certain about the whole kid playing at point guard, in spots. Brevin Knight did, or not Brevin Knight, my goodness, Brandon Knight. Brevin,
That's an old name.
yeah. Brandon Knight played pretty well in spots down the stretch. I remember games where he's gone on stretches, 22, 26. More of a volume scorer, dives to the hole. Mayo, that guy's a disaster. He should be better than what he was. They brought in Jared Dudley. That's another perimeter threat. He had a bad season out west. Bayless is in. Nice athletic guard off the bench. I like John Henson a lot off the bench. Larry Sanders, it seems, is out of the doghouse. He was in the doghouse all year last year. We'll see. Maybe they surprise us. Maybe they're even a little bit better than the Pacers. Maybe the Pacers go real bad. But they got some nice, young pieces. Jabari comes in NBA ready. That's the thing. That's why I like him over Wiggins right now. Jabari's got an NBA ready body, an NBA ready offensive game. Realistically, I can see Jabari dropping 17 to 18 a game, maybe even more. On sheer volume once again. But as far as this division goes, I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's Chicago and Cleveland. Like you said, chemistry issues for Cleveland. They'll figure it out. LeBron's going to take charge of that. Will Dion Waiters buy in? He's at best the fourth option. I'm sure he's not too crazy about that, but when LeBron and Kevin Love are involved, you got to man up and realize where your spot is. He can have all his beef in the world he wants with Kyrie, but Kyrie's running the show now too. So, it is what it is, and if he becomes a headache, maybe they'll try to deal him. And honestly, another Bulls angle from this. Last year when we were struggling to come to some sort of tentative agreement with Wall as far as where we were going to go on the contract, we were shooting in, 3 years for 10 a year, and his camp wanted 14, and I mean that's $4 million. That's it's a 40% gap. It's a big deal. So that being run like a business, they got rid of the Wall. But the rumor is we were going to get Waiters in a pick for the Wall and something else. And I was like, jump on it. Once again, the whole two-guard thing. I love Jimmy Butler, but the guy can't shoot. Yes, he's played pretty well in the preseason, but talk to me when he's done it for 80 games. Totally different game. But we weren't lucky enough to land that. We got Bynum, waived him, all that. So, so it was a little disappointing. But, Chicago rebounded after not getting Melo, brought in Gasol. We got McBuckets traded up for him. Mirotic, I really think Mirotic is going to do some things. I hadn't seen him at all. I picked him up, cable issues, about the 6th game of the preseason. And it's kind of funny. He only had 2 points, rebound, a couple assists, a couple steals. But here's what I see. If you've ever played the game or you've been around the game long enough, you can see what guys have good basketball IQ, and his is fantastic. Always makes the right pass. takes good shots, plays within the context of the game. He surprised me with how quick his hands were on defense. He had quite a few steals in the preseason. I just think over time, getting a little bit stronger, being more accustomed to the game over here, he's going to be all right. You know, a lot of people said, you know, Dirk comparisons. Yeah, I mean, Dirk's seventh, and you know, by the end of the season, probably going to be the seventh, you know, highest scorer in the league history. You know, come on, that's a stretch. I get it, but as far as him being a competent or better than normal stretch four in the league in years come, I can see it. The guy's talented. He really is. But I wouldn't hope for too much out of him or McDermott this year. You know, if either one of them can come off the bench and get the Bulls anywhere from 6 to 9 points a game, I'm okay with that. You know, the Bulls, if they come out of the East, you know, they're going to do it as a sum of their parts. Yeah, Derek's got to be a part of it. Yeah, Derek's got to be the man. But he's got to have help. And bringing in Gasol, you know, yeah, not a Melo once again, but it's a nice piece. He's got championship experience. He does a lot of things right. He's an upgrade. I know people rip on him about his physicality on defense and things like that, but he's still a better defender than Boozer. I've watched too many years of that. You know, lazy, rotating, always using his hands too much, pushing. You know, not a fan of Boozer at all. And, you know, Boozer doesn't play big. He never finishes above the rim, and he stays 15 to 18 feet out. At least Powell's long enough he can get down on the block and do some things. And not only that, he can hit a 20-foot jump or even stretch it, you know, all the way out to the corner for threes, although I don't want him all the way out there all the time, you know. If Powell can come in and give me, you know, or give the Bulls 15 to 17 and 8 rebounds a game, I'm good with that. I'm totally okay with that. So, like I said, if they're gonna beat Cleveland this year, it's got to be a sum of its parts. You know, it's got to be more than a one-headed monster with Rose, because we've all seen in the past how that goes in the playoffs. When you only got one guy that can create off the dribble, nobody else has their own offense. It becomes pretty easy to guard, especially when you got athletes like Dwayne Wade and LeBron doubling people. So, yeah. As far as LeBron goes, you know, I think that we'd heard so many rumors about the Cavs chasing bigs like Hibbert and the sort, because they're looking to trap and get out and run. He's got younger legs with this crew, you know, with Kyrie and Dion. You know, and even Kevin can run the floor and trail and hit the three. But we'll see. We'll see. Can LeBron, you know, rewind, you know, 2-3 years and play the defense consistently that he did? You know, he was real guilty of roaming a lot last year, and he seemed disinterested at times, you know, and I'd always have a pretty good laugh. Is he capable of being the defensive player of the year every year? You know what? If he wanted to, yeah. But unfortunately, the way the game is nowadays is your star players, especially the ones that are so gifted on offense, and obviously he is, they tend to hide him on defense, you know. Perfect example, I remember a game last year where he's guarding George, and just dogging him. And Paul George was having an awful first half. He was frustrated. You know, Miami is up big at the half. Well, LeBron was gassed. You could see it when he went to the bench. He was huffing. You know, he was doing work. He was getting over the screens. He was chasing. You know, he's doing everything he could to be a nuisance to Paul George, and it was working. But in the second half, to save his legs, they were putting him on. I know they were putting him on Scola, and I want to say Stevenson too, which isn't a total scapegoat, you know, on defense, but Lance is not as quite fluid as the Paul George. You know, he's too unpredictable. You know, Paul's more efficient. Anyways, you know, ironically, and not so ironically, the Pacers come back and win the game. Paul George gets hot. I hate that about the game nowadays. You know, Michael, Scotty, I know I sound like a jilted Bulls fan, but Gary Payton, people like that, you know, you go back and they always played both sides of the ball. You know, whatever happened to that? That kills me. So I'm sounding like an old man. I won't go on about it, but that does kill me about LeBron because he's so talented. I mean, you can dislike him, hate him, and I'm not his biggest fan because of the whole, you know, decision way back. But, you know, I'm a fool if I sit here and tell you he's not the most talented guy in the league. I mean, it's not even close. KD's closing the gap, but it's still LeBron's league. It's still going to be his league for 2 or 3 years. I just want more on the defensive end, you know. But he's going to do his thing, man. They're going to be fun to watch, and they're going to be hard to stop. I'm not so sure, and especially if they don't get a bona fide rim protector. I'm not so sure how they'll be defensively, at least consistently. And it wasn't a good sign for them. I know it's only preseason, but the last time they played the Bulls, I know they beat them. But Rose had Kyrie. He was turning around left and right. Rose. I know I sound like a homer, but it's for real, man. Rose was doing the same. But on the flip side, I can also say if that's the only way we're going to score against them like that, we won't beat them. We can't beat them if Rose is the only guy doing it. So it'll be a dogfight, man. I think Chicago gets the number 1 seed. I think we win the division, but all bets are off once we get to the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think with Butler, I think he's improved tremendously on his jump shot, and I think his shooting percentage is correlated with the amount of minutes that he played last year, because he played 40-plus minutes last year, and I mean, you can almost expect him having a low shooting percentage, especially since Derrick Rose was out. So there's a lot of pressure on him. Boozer wasn't playing to his capability. And then, Mike Dunn would be playing the 3, and then Joakim Noah. And I think this year we will see a better shooting performance from Butler, since you have Derrick Rose back, who would create a lot of that attention. You have Paul Gasol in the post, who would draw a lot of that attention. He can still shoot the ball. He can still bang down low. And then you have Joakim Noah with that ugly jump shot of his. I've never
seen
anything like it.
It's getting better.
It goes in. I can't complain with
it. Ain't pretty, but it's going. It's getting better.
My God.
So, you know what? Honestly, though, I think Joe's numbers are going to go down a little bit, just with Powell there. That's going to eat into his assists. It's going to eat into his shots. And Joe, more or less, let's be serious, he creates his own offense off tips, off putbacks, cleaning up. But Jimmy, like you said, Jimmy's going to be more efficient. If you look back, he wasn't great. It wasn't like he was shooting the lights out. But 2 years ago, his numbers are much better. But when you don't have a point guard that can draw the kind of attention that Rose does, and you're guarding the best perimeter player on the other team, whether it be a LeBron, whether it be a Paul George, whether it be a Kawhi, you're doing work, man. Mm-hmm. And when you're putting in 40 minutes a game, it adds up, man. You're only human. Your legs can only take so much. And Jimmy's going to work on the defensive end. It takes away from his offensive game. There's no doubt about it, especially when you're guarding the best position on the floor, usually night in and night out. So he will be better. I will say, as a Bulls fan, I've had to put a few people in check online. Everybody's getting all bent, especially after that game winner he hit the other night. He had 20 points in the fourth or something like that. Oh, Jimmy's going to get 18 or 20 games. No, he's not. That's not his job. He's going to be more efficient. He's going to be good. But realistically, seriously, I wouldn't see any more than 14 a game, and I think that's a stretch with Rose back. But I'll take it. If it's more efficient, it's still better. You know what you're going to get on the other end. You've got a plus rebounder at the 2. Not many guys at the 2 rebound better than him. Lance does. Lance is top notch. Dwayne Wade does. But he's in the top 5 rebounding 2 guards. And he's definitely a top 2 or 3 wing defender. Period. So it should be a good year for us. Health, knock on wood, health providing. But that goes for everybody. So I think we win the regular season division. I think we see him in the ECF. If we're healthy, I think it's going to be dragged down, knockout. I hate to sound like a homer. I think we got him. But if they beat us, I wouldn't be surprised. And it wouldn't ruin my fandom that year. I mean, it's LeBron. It's his until somebody takes it from him. It's a fact.
Yeah. And another thing I wanted to touch on was Jabari and Wiggins, the comparisons. Now, I always feel that the thing that separated Jordan from the other great players at his position was fundamentals. He's probably the most fundamentally sound athlete that the game has ever seen. And with Dominique, he wasn't as fundamentally sound as Jordan, nor was Clyde Drexler. And I think that's what separated. And with Wiggins and Jabari, what separates them is Jabari's fundamentals. He's much more fundamentally sound on the offensive end than Wiggins is. Defensively, I think Wiggins has him beat. He's going to be a special defender in this league.
He already is.
He's going to be a special defender.
Just on length alone and his jumping ability. I mean, you've already seen the preseason or, in the summer league games where he's coming from behind and he pins one off the backboard and goes the other way. He's got great length. He's quick. I think he's quicker than Jabari. Jabari's stronger. Jabari's more refined offensively. But when you play above the rim like Wiggins, you can kind of impose your will like you want.
Yeah.
It's just now he's in a men's league.
Yeah.
It's time to man up. You're playing with the big boys now. So, you're not going to see him high flying. But I tell you what, you're going to see in Minnesota is you're going to see I don't know if you want to call them Minnesota Midwest, but, the northern part of the Midwest, you're going to see the like the Blake show, like Chris Paul and Blake show out there. You're going to be a lot of alley-oops, dude. A lot. Levine, Wiggins, and
they have Rubio passing it.
Oh, yeah.
and they have Rubio, yeah. That's gonna be a fun team to watch. Not quite playoff, not yet, but they're gonna be very exciting. I pay to watch them on League Pass.
I've already started paying on that. I'm gonna be watching.
And I plan on watching them, and the same thing with Kobe and Tracy McGrady. What separated the two was fundamentals. Kobe was much more fundamentally sound than Tracy McGrady was. I think with McGrady, he had to work for a lot of his shots. He had to do a lot of extra dribbling to create space and whatever. And Kobe, it was footwork, pump fakes and whatever. He was more fundamentally sound, and that's what separated the two. Even though I think, in my opinion, that, if we're looking at their primes, I feel as if McGrady was a better player than Kobe in the early 2000s. Now, I'm talking about Orlando T-Mac. He was putting up 30 a game, 32, 5 and 5, around there. And always thought that he was, but as they got older, Kobe aged like wine. Around the time T-Mac went to Houston, it was just, that's where the separation started. You kind of saw, who was the better player after all.
Well, they say the separation, and Kobe, I think, flat out has said that T-Mac was the hardest player he had to ever guard. But the separation there is just it's the Jordan gene. Kobe's got it.
Yeah.
He's a maniac. And not to rip on T-Mac, love him, all-timer, but the rip on him, minus the whole health issue, his knees going bad on him, and Vince Carter for this matter, was the hard issue. They just said people didn't think they worked as hard as they should have. You hear that a lot around the league.
Mm-hmm.
Take what you want from it. There's still, talents that are going to go down. They're going to be talked about for forever. But, Kobe's a maniac, man, flat out. That's all there is to it.
I think with the how hard they work, or the work ethic issue, I think I would put that more on Vince Carter than T-Mac, only because, T-Mac has come out and said that, he did everything in his power to try to get back to where he was before after his knee injury, that he tried everything, and he once considered using performing enhancing drugs just to get back to that level, because he anxious so much. And I think what separated Vince and T-Mac was heart. I feel as if T-Mac had heart, because you can't score 13 points in
39 seconds.
You don't have heart. Like you can't do that if you don't have heart.
Right.
I mean, and I think what hurt him a lot was that he went through mediocrity in Orlando, getting knocked out of the first round, and then management trading their pieces, Darryl Armstrong, trading everybody, and, he just had to settle for a 19-win season. I thought, that didn't help the cause at all. And then in Houston, man, he showed up in the playoffs. He performed. It was just, the team as a whole couldn't quite get over that hump. And, I was really disappointed that he couldn't get his ring with San Antonio. So I feel like he's one of those players that should have a ring along with Chris Webber, Charles Barkley, Malone, amongst others. So I was kind of disappointed, but I think with Vince Carter, I think that he rode the pine his whole career, relied on athleticism. I think now more so, he's a lot more skilled than he was in his younger years.
He's recreated himself, and it's a shame that he didn't have this kind of skill set to go with that, because his athleticism, we may never see something like that again. I mean, it was just, I'll never forget that dunk contest. I remember I was at college, and we were just looking at each other like, you got to be kidding me. Yeah. I've never seen anything like this, man. So it was fun to watch, but just didn't understand him sometimes, I don't know. We'll never know. That's on him. That's his issue, whether it was an issue or not. But it's definitely questioned. So.
Yeah, and you can't forget his dunk over the 7-footer too in the Olympics. That was
Yeah,
ridiculous. That was ridiculous.
a lot of people say that's the greatest dunk of all time. It's yeah, I've seen it a few times. I like it.
Yeah, it struck a nerve with me when people were saying that LeBron's dunk over um, John Lucas was better than Vince Carter. It's like, really? He's 5'11".
Yeah,
Like,
I'm as tall as John Lucas. End of story.
and he had a running start. Like,
Yeah,
Vince Carter got the ball, gathered, and jumped over a 7-footer. Maybe I'm exaggerating it a little bit, but
no, he jumped over
yeah,
him.
yeah, he jumped over a 7-footer. Like,
Yeah, he jumped over the dude.
like I can't even jump over a table most of the
Right.
time.
It's mind-boggling. I can't
Yeah.
imagine. I can't imagine what that would be like. But anyways, as far as the Southeast, we have made our way to the Southeast. What do you got going on there? Because I'm torn. I got to hear what you have to say. We've talked about this, and I'm still trying to piece together my thoughts on it.
Man, I thought about it for a good hour. Like,
right?
it tore me apart, and I was mostly torn on Washington and Miami. Who should I put first or second? And and what I ended up was I had Washington finishing first in the division, and then Miami finishing second. I think it's going to be really close. This is going to come down to the last stretch of the season, to decide who's going to win the division. But I have Washington, Miami, and then I have Charlotte right behind them, Atlanta, and then Orlando. And with Orlando, I like what they did in the offseason. Elfrid Payton, I thought that was a huge acquisition. You pair him up with Oladipo, then you have Vucevic in the post. That's a good trio for the future. That's not bad at all.
Vuce is a beast, man.
Oh yeah, and then with Atlanta, you have a Jeff T, who I think is going to take that next level. Like we discussed earlier, he's one of the best at at changing the pace. He stays under control. He can pass. He can shoot. He shows some flashes in the playoffs and what he can do. He balled out against Indiana. He showed up, and then
I remember his coming out party against the Bulls in playoffs 2 years back.
Yeah.
I'm like, who is this guy? Coming down the middle of the lane and yanking on people. I'm like, who is this dude? He's never looked back since. That was the coming out party. Was in the playoffs that year against the Bulls.
And then you have Al Horford, who's finally healthy, and then you have Paul Millsap. I like the direction that this team is going in, especially with Budenholzer at the helm. He's a product of Greg Popovich. He can coach. Like he can flat out coach. Like I've seen I remember one year, I can't remember which year it was. He coached the Spurs bench against a win or to a victory against Golden State. Like he can coach, and he proved that last year. They proved a lot of people wrong last year because many didn't think they would make the playoffs after the moves that Danny Ferry had made that offseason. Many thought, they took a step back. They weren't going to make the playoffs. They came out, and they made the playoffs. And they gave Indiana a run for their money.
Mm-hmm.
And with Charlotte, they're not the laughingstock of the league anymore. You have Kemba, Lance Stevenson, Al Jefferson. They can make a little run in the playoffs, And then I love what Steve Clifford has done. His tough mentality. He's a blue collar guy, and that's perfect with a guy like Stevenson, who's a blue collar player. He'll get in your face. He's scrappy, tough. He's a gamer.
Maybe a little bit crazy, but I like that. I like that edge. I can understand it. Trust me.
Yeah, and we know what Al Jefferson can do. He gives you a 20 and 10 every night. And Kemba, I think he's taking that next level this year. Pair him with Stevenson, that takes a lot of pressure off of him, and he can do Kemba. He's a good shooter. He has that clutch gene in him. He showed that at Connecticut.
Sure.
The guy, at the end of the game, I want the ball in his hands on this team. That's the guy I want the ball, or I want to have the ball rather. And with Miami, obviously it's a huge loss, with LeBron leaving. That's huge, but they made up for it with a little ding. Not as quite on a talent level as LeBron, but he can still play. He can still produce. And then Chris Bosh can finally go back to the Chris Bosh that he was in Toronto. He can put up 20 this year. I wouldn't be surprised at all. Maybe 20 and 10. The offense that Spoelstra had when LeBron was there, it limited Bush's skill set, or not. Excuse me, Bosh's skill set, because
Reggie Bush's skill set.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm so excited from the Lions game earlier. it limited his skill set tremendously. He's away from the basket. Now it did. I mean, he did become a better jump shooter. I mean,
Oh yeah.
I can't knock him for that, but I mean, it irritates me when he gets knocked for his rebounding totals. But that's not fair to him. I mean, the 5-minute offense is designed for him to stand out, create space for LeBron to go in ISO, and maybe throw in a little pick and roll action in the mix. And I don't think that was fair to him. Dwayne Wade, he's gonna be the player that makes a break or that decides whether or not they're gonna contend this year. Because if you stay healthy, then I don't see why they can't, make a run at the playoffs along with Chicago, Toronto, Cleveland, etc. I don't see why they can't. I mean, and last year, I mean, I was really disappointed because Wade sat out a bunch of games to only lay an egg in the finals.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was really disappointed in that. And with Washington, I love John Wall and Bradley Beal. Now, coming out the gate with Bradley Beal hurt, because he's going to miss some time, I believe, with a broken wrist. Now, I think that's going to hurt him early in the season. But I think those two together are too good. I mean, I like what I saw against Indiana. Beal hits some big shots.
Saw plenty of it against Chicago. Trust me.
Yeah. I mean, and then you have a Nene down low. You have Gortat. I mean, they're gonna hold the fort down along with Wall until Beal comes back. And then Paul Pierce is he's gonna provide that veteranship that they need. He's gonna produce. Now he's not gonna be the Paul Pierce that we saw in 08 and etc. But he can still play. I mean, he can defend a little bit. He's still a decent defender. He can still shoot the ball. That hasn't gone anywhere. I mean, I don't know of anyone that's become a worse jump shooter overnight. I mean,
yeah, usually that's the last thing to go. So
yeah, I mean, we saw
that's probably not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, we saw that with Sean Kemp. I mean, after he gained weight, I mean, he was still a good jump shooter. He stayed around the league. I mean, for a few more years after the lockout, and he kind of, he had his demons off the court and etc. So he still has that. He can hit some shots, and again, I think that's gonna help them be without Bradley Beal for that stretch that he's gonna be out.
Yeah, they've got some nice young talent that they showcased this summer. Like we talked about, you've got Otto Porter, you've got Glenn Rice Jr. I think if I remember right, Glenn Rice Jr. was the Summer League MVP, whatever that means. But they've got some nice pieces. They also have a big piece off the bench missing. Martell Webster's out for a little bit. He's a gunner. He's a guy that can come in and can spread the floor. They've got some good veterans. I mean, a little bit over the hill, but we got Drew Gooden, who came back from bagging groceries and made himself relevant again last year. Chris Humphries, he's away from the Kardashians. He should be better. DeJuan Blair, he'll give you some minutes. He's going to rough up some people, bruise some people up. Andre Miller, so a lot of veterans. Not to mention Paul Pierce. But it's hard not to like that starting five. I'm not as high on them as you, but I'm really, honest to goodness, I'm not completely sure how I feel about the Southeast. The way I got it shaken down is I've got Miami winning. I like their starting five. I think Bosch is 2010 at the worst, maybe even 22-9. You'll see him a little bit more on the block because basically Mick Roberts, when he was in Charlotte, here's a nice stat on him. 53% of his shots were attempts past the three-point line. So, I mean, him and Bosch aren't going to be both occupying the same same place on the floor. Bosch is going to have to work, the mid-range game more, the inside game every now and then, even though, and this killed me, I don't know if you saw this last year, when he came out in the media and said he wasn't going to bang anymore because it wasn't his thing. He couldn't expend that kind of energy. Man up, man.
Yeah.
He did it in Toronto. It's just, in all seriousness, he's the one that made the biggest sacrifice in Miami, and it made it work. He allowed the space to be created for Dwayne Wade and LeBron to slash and kick the shooters, and Bosch, did his thing. But it's no coincidence, and when most games when LeBron was down, Bosch showed out. It's
Yeah.
not a coincidence, people. It's just not. He's going to put up numbers. He's going to be good. They got a lot of question marks coming off the bench. Can Danny Granger? He's not Danny Granger that we used to know. We all know that by now. But can he provide some lift off the bench? I like Luol Deng. I think that was a great pickup. Very underrated. He's a very solid third option. Wade has to stay healthy. What do they do at the point guard position? Is Rio going to be de facto starter? I don't know. I wouldn't mind seeing Norris Cole start, and then everybody had the buzz on Shabazz Napier. I'm not sold on him, by the way. But Miami's interesting. If that starting five can stay healthy, they can get something out of Danny Granger. Birdman's Birdman. And Cole can give him some minutes. Who knows? And they're pretty high on Ennis as well, the rookie coming in. As far as second in the division, I don't know, man. Second through fourth it's crazy. I got Charlotte. It's a gut call. Kemba, like you said, he's got help now. He's not the only guy who can create off the dribble. His backcourt mate last year, Gerald Henderson, nice athlete, decent, okay defender at best. Not anything dynamic. It makes some highlight plays just out of sheer athleticism, but you don't hear about Gerald Henderson, shooting the lights out, filling it up. It's not his thing. They're pretty high on Vonleh. I wouldn't be surprised if Vonleh ends up starting by the end of the year. In the meantime, I'd expect Marvin Williams to play the 4. MKG, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, he's improved. Got a shot doctor involved. Took care of somewhat of that problem. I don't know how much you can fix a problem like that, but he's actually looked decent for mid-range. I saw him pull a couple, 16, 18-footers against the Bulls in their preseason showing, netted them both. Obviously they left him alone. They gave him plenty of space. But and then Jefferson, everything starts with him. He's the man there. Not Kemba, not Lance. Everything revolves around Al Jefferson. He will old man you to death. Head fakes, up and unders, you name it. He's not going to jump over you. He's going to run over you, or he's going to scooch by you, and he's going to continue to do it. He's got a great. I love his shot fake from about 15. He like shows it to you and goes up over his head with it. Gets people all the time. It's old man to the nines. He's like the new school, old school Tim Duncan. Anyways, I'll tell you what, a rookie I really like off their bench that I saw is P.J. Hairston. I think he used to play for North Carolina. He might do some things, dude. He's got an NBA body, and he ain't scared, man. He was really aggressive against the Bulls in the preseason. Has shot it pretty well from distance, and he's got a good, strong, sturdy body. You got Zeller off the bench. Gary Neal, that's another shooter. Biombo comes in as a defender. Brian Roberts. Brian Roberts is a nice pickup as a backup point guard coming from New Orleans. He can do some things. He had some spot starts where he put up some numbers. And then, of course, Gerald Henderson's going on the bench as a six-man. A nice six-man to have, He can do some things off the bench. In the 3 spot, I got, Atlanta. I've got Atlanta. You show no love to the ATL. I got love for the ATL. It's a big deal, dude. It's a big deal with Horford coming back. Very underrated. Horford's going to give you your 17 and 9 tonight. Millsap, he'll have less attention on him. He's going to stretch the floor. He's really done a nice job of turning himself into a legit stretch 4. Although I like him around the hole a little bit more, rebound a little bit more. But he's still going to get his 8+ tonight. DeMarre Carroll, great. Not great, but a solid role player. Will harass you on defense, has good length, can hit the 3, does a lot of things. They'll probably end up starting Corver because, Corver keeps the floor space. They did bring in Cephalosha from Oklahoma City. It's an extra defender. Tabo doesn't necessarily score a whole lot, but he'll put it out there for you. And then you got Jeff Teague. Love Jeff Teague. I really think he's primed to have his best year yet. I think he's still on the come up. I'd like to see him even get a little more aggressive even, but now with Al back in the mix, he'll have to pick his spots. Off the bench, they did do some things off the bench. Their bench isn't that bad. Ask Roy Hibbert what he thinks of Pero Antic. Gave him nightmares. He probably thought about him all summer because he stretched the floor. That's where Roy got exposed. That's why Atlanta gave him so many problems in the first round. Bazemore came over. He can be a dynamic guard. He can score a little bit. You know, he can get some double-digit games off the bench. You know, you got old man Elton Brand. He's still hanging on, but he'll come in, be physical. You know, give you 5-6 points, 5-6 rebounds. Shelvin Mack. Shelvin Mack, I like it at times. He seems still at times to be a little bit out of control, but he can fill it up quick. And then Mike Scott. Mike Scott's very nice. He's a legit stretch forward. He can really shoot it from distance. You know, 6'10", 6'11". He's good for, you know, 8, 10 points off the bench. I like the makeup of their team. I don't think they get a lot of respect, and I think they're going to surprise some people. I think people have forgot about them. They surprised people last year. I know they snuck in the playoffs at under 500, but you ask Indiana how they felt after that 7-game series. You've you've got Washington winning the division. I've got them in 4th. Like I said, there's interchangeable parts. At least how I see it, 1 through 4. You know, an injury could change anything for anybody. I'm not crazy about that bench in Washington. They got some nice depth, but I'm still not crazy about it. It doesn't strike me as very dynamic. Nene, you know, they need him to stay healthy. Gortat, I like Gortat. Gortat does some things. He's a good offensive player. Nene is too when he's healthy. What can Paul Pierce give you? I mean, realistically, Pierce will stretch the floor still. I would guess, you know, if he can get 12, 13 points a game, that should be fine. Beal, they're going to miss him. I think he's out 6-8 weeks. You know, Webster's out too, as I had mentioned. So we might be getting a large dose of Otto Porter coming in. I don't know. Some remains to be seen. You know, maybe even Glenn Rice. We'll see. You know, a lot of things will change once, you know, the whole rotation will get flipped once Webster and Beal obviously are back. Then you got John Wall, extremely underrated. You know, one of the best arguments you get in some of the Facebook basketball rooms were when people will compare him and Kyrie, who's better. Well, you know, Kyrie's dynamic. Yeah, he's going to shake you up a little bit. Yeah, he's probably the better shooter from distance, very streaky. But Wall's knack on, you know, the knack on him was, and knock on him is that he wasn't a great shooter. He was much improved last year, but still there's work to be done, you know, especially from distance. But Wall dice you up. You know, Kyrie will shake you up, but Wall comes straight at you. You know, he's like a hot butter through knife. You know, he's coming right at you, and he's coming fast. He's faster than Kyrie is. Kyrie's sneaky quick, you know. He'll mesmerize you with the dribble, drop the J off the dribble in your face. Wall's coming at you, man, and he's coming at you about 110 mile an hour, and he's not going to apologize about it. But people forget, too, it was Wall led the entire league in total assists last year. You know, yeah, Chris Paul missing that bit of time out west, you know, that opened the door for it, but Wall's become a really good distributor. You know, they could finish anywhere from 1st to 4th. I've got them 4th. I know it's crazy. Everybody's high on them after what they did in the playoffs, but I try to keep it real. I try not to be a prisoner of the moment. I felt very conflicted on it, but I got them at 4th. And then bottom of the league, obviously Orlando. Like you said, they've extended quite a few of the guys. This is a make-or-break year, I think, for Jacques Vaughn as their head coach. They have to take a step forward with all that youth. They've got some pieces. I mean, can they, you know, win 5, 8 more games? I don't know. I'm not sure. Doesn't help that Vico is out for a month with the facial fracture. But he'll come back. You know, I think he was good for 13-4-4 last year. It'll be better. I would expect 16 to 18 a game. You know, 4 or 5 rebounds, 5, 6 assists. Curious to see how Alfred Payton does at the point. He's got nice length, very good defender. Not the sharpest offensive player, but he doesn't turn over the ball. You know, that the jumper can be a work in progress, but I think he could be a nice piece going forward. Tobias Harris is very underrated. That's another guy. And Vucevic, you know, he's a beast. I don't know how many 2020 games he had last year, but I think he had 2 or 3. He's an animal. He had a lot of issues, I think, with his ankles down the stretch. Why do I know that? He was on one of my fantasy league teams. It was killing him. Come on, dude. Keep those ankles in check, man. And then does Aaron Gordon play the 4? I know Channing Frye's hurt right now. Does he possibly play the 4? You got Mo Harkless, I think Kyle O'Quinn. I think this is his first name, Kyle O'Quinn. He's a good rebounder off the bench, give you 6, 7 boards off the bench. They brought in Ridnour to bolster the point guard position. They're making moves in the right direction. Unfortunately, it's not going to be enough, obviously, right now. But just like Philadelphia, you know, in 2 years, we may be having a whole different conversation. It's just whether or not they can keep those pieces together. But as far as those top 4, man, it's up for grabs. Anything can happen, and nothing would surprise me whatsoever.
Yeah, I
If
think
Miami
with
stays healthy, they could be a headache. Ain't no doubt
yeah,
about it.
yeah, I think with Aaron Gordon, he reminds me a lot of Derek Williams from a couple of years ago. Extremely athletic, but what position he plays in the pros would dictate if he's successful.
Yeah,
Because Derek Williams, he's been playing the wrong position in the pros. Now he wanted to be a three, I guess, and it hasn't worked out very well. And he's a good jump shooter too. I think he showed that in the tournament the year he was drafted. Good jump shooter, good defender, really athletic, underperforming in his career so far. And I think with Aaron Gordon, the type of position that he plays will, show us, or will determine if he's successful or not. Because it's extremely important. He's really athletic. He can shoot the ball. He can defend. I remember in the beginning of the college season, he was projected to be the #1 pick. And then, Wiggins and then Jabari, that kind of took over that. And but yeah, he reminds me a lot of Aaron Gordon, or not Aaron Gordon, but Derek Williams. And real quick, I wanted to touch on the best backcourt argument with Kyrie and Wall. That little argument.
mm-hmm.
Now, I think, in my opinion, if we're talking about the most talented backcourt, now it doesn't matter if starting. It could be Chris Paul and Jamal Crawford. He's on the bench, but
Sure,
the best pairing.
sure.
Now, I think the most talented has to be Steph and Clay. I think the most talented by far. But if I need a backcourt to win one game only, just one game. Now, I'm not trying to sound be a homer as well, because I'm a Spurs fan. But if I need to win one game, I have to roll with Parker and Ginobili. I mean, if I want to win one game, only because they've been there before. We're talking about 4 championships, playoffs every single year. They've knocked out Steph and Clay and the Warriors. They've knocked out Paul and Crawford and the Clippers. Swept them. Now, Golden State gave us some problems. That I'll admit. Steph, it scared me a little bit that series, along with Dallas last year. No, but
Mm-hmm.
that's a whole different story. But
Yeah, and they're better this year. Good luck with that.
man, it's gonna be a long season. But
It's going to be interesting, but I feel you. I mean, they're winners in San Antonio, but I mean, as far as keeping it in the East, like I said, I shoot it back to Toronto, man. No respect for DeRozan and Lowry.
yeah,
I love Lowry. I've heard stories about Lowry. I guess his temper is kind of legendary. He's so competitive that he's kind of his worst enemy. But he's kind of toned it down. But boy, you can tell when he kicks it in extra gear. Sometimes that can go against him, I guess. And the ability that he might try to do too much. But that's what guys do. That rise to the moment. You got to take chances. You can't be scared. And that guy ain't scared. I got news for you. But going forward, I think DeMar is their best player. Especially his perimeter game's got to get better. I think he's shot in the high 20s, low 30s from three. I'm not saying he's got to be a three-point shooter to be successful, but it definitely wouldn't hurt him. But Kyle's going to chug up his threes, so it evens out. But I really like that backcourt. I really like their depth, and they'll be a headache, man. Outside of Chicago and Cleveland, I really think Toronto is the third best team. So we will see. But I got the Bulls coming out of the East. I got to represent, not being a homer, because normally, I'll tell you what, in the last 2 years, I said they'd never get past the second round. Even when they played well and competed, without Derek, come on. When you get in a 7-game series, it's a whole different animal. Things are exposed. The Bulls are run down. That's a concern. Is Tibbs going to manage minutes better? He's got to. Gosh, they're so much deeper than they have been. They haven't been this deep in 3 years, and I like their depth even more this year. But Tibbs, make no mistake, no joke, Tibbs is on the hot seat. If they fall short of going to the Eastern Conference Finals, he and management have been at odds here for a couple years. He'll be out the door. I'll put $20 on it right now. I just said this on live webcast. $20, man. Who's coming at me? Tibbs will be out the door if they don't make the Eastern Conference Finals, if they're healthy. If Derrick Rose stays healthy and is Derrick Rose, and they don't make the Eastern Conference Finals, he's out of a job, flat out.
Yeah, I'm on that college budget, so I can't go on that bet. But now, Now, if Tibbs is gone, who do you see replacing him?
Who knows? I mean, teams must like something about Adrian Griffin because he's an assistant on the bench.
Mhm.
Um, he got a couple job interviews. I'm trying to remember offhand who it was with. I think it was somebody out west, maybe Denver, maybe a couple years ago. I can't remember. I may be wrong on that. But Griffin's been talked to a few times by other teams. Um, as far as anybody, outside, there's some guys still out there. It kills me. Don't get me started on this. I'll just say this. The fact that George Karl doesn't have a job just kills me. Absolutely kills me.
Now that's now
I
that's
don't
the
get
thing
it.
that's bugged me. Why do you fire your coach? You just won 50 games.
Yeah, and
You,
make playoffs
you
how many
exceeded,
years in a row? And bring in an unproven quality in
you,
Brian Shaw.
like you exceeded expectations. Coach of the year, you fire him? Now don't
Fire
get
him.
me wrong.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I think Brian Shaw should have had an NBA job a long time ago. I mean, the guy, I like him a lot. I'm high on him. I thought he should have been hired years before the Denver hiring. I thought initially he should have went to Indiana. He should have been hired as their head coach before they got Vogel. But that's a different story after Carroll left and whatnot. But now I've always like that's the one thing that's bugged me. Like, why do you fire George Karl? Like, you just want
No
50.
respect, man.
Like,
No respect. The stigma with him is that the fact that he's never done anything in the playoffs. Now that's not completely true with him getting Seattle to the finals. He's always been a
yeah,
winner. He's just never won the big one. And I
yeah,
think that's a stigma that's stuck with him, and he kind of gets an unfair shake. And he's kind of a surly character. He rubs people the wrong way. He's one of those coaches that after a while sometimes the players start to tune out.
yeah.
But I mean, most coaches that dog you, that's going to happen. That's just part of it. They're millionaires. They don't like to be told what to do. But the guy's obviously good at what he does. He wins. I'd love to see him back in the league sometime.
Yeah.
You know what? And if Tibbs had exit stage left, you know what? Come on, George. You can come crash the pad for a couple nights. We'll figure something out.
Yeah.
But it's the Eastern Conference this year, man. It's definitely more. There's more parity. It's
Oh,
not
yeah.
that LeBron left the conference; it's that he reshaped it. Um, so it's gonna be interesting. I got my guys coming out of the East. I don't think the East wins it though. I do not think the team that wins the championship comes out of the East, whether it be the Cavs or the Bulls. They're not winning it this year. So we'll leave that open. We can lead in with the West. I know that's your forte. That's your guys.
Yeah.
So, but it's one or the other going in. Nobody in the
Yeah.
East is coming out. I just don't see them winning it all this year.
Yeah, and I think the thing that killed me last year was Phoenix. They didn't get in the playoffs, but they won 48 games.
Yeah,
They make the playoffs. Like now,
Minnesota would have been like a 6 or 7 seed in the East. It's just and then they throw up the whole reseeding as far as record, which I do like for the record. You should you should gift the right teams with the ability to go in the postseason. The teams that have earned it, record-wise, if you strictly break it down by numbers. Atlanta, yes, they put up a good showing in the first round against Indiana, but they had no business being there. Yeah, it had a lot to do with the Al Horford injury. It is what it is, man. With that record in the West, they wouldn't have been sniffing it. You know what I'm saying? It's unfortunate. In the West race for 8, went down to the last day. It was fantastic. It's a shame we can't just get the best 16 teams in, reseed them all according to record, and just roll with it. Maybe that's something Silver, he'll contemplate. I wish something could have been done about the whole tanking ordeal. Not a fan. It's part of the game. It is what it is. But
it kills the game.
yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it. It bails GMs and bad ownership out.
And then the coaches get blamed. There's a scapegoat because
Sure.
management hasn't gotten them talent.
Yep.
And I don't think that's fair. Like, if you're going to rebuild and tank, give the coach enough time to be able to coach these guys. Because I know if I'm a coach and I'm not getting talent, I'm not going to be happy. Because at the end of the day, you're not doing your job.
You're not helping.
I mean,
you should be there to help one another,
Yeah.
and that's not exactly a win-win situation. It's got to be frustrating, but you got to have a job, and you got to get paid.
yeah.
And those guys make some money, but that'd be quite a stressful daily grind. Not one I'd probably want to be part of. But anyway, so yeah, that's where I sit on the Eastern Conference. I didn't know if you wanted to add anything more about who you think's coming out, anything like that.
Like, I think any of the top 4 teams could come out of the East. Anybody I think could be anybody, but ultimately, I think at the end of the day, it's going to be Cleveland and Chicago fighting to come out of the East. And I'm torn on that because I was a LeBron guy. And the thing that I'm so conflicted on is because I don't know how Kyrie and Kevin Love are going to do, in that on that stage, because they've never even sniffed the playoffs before, let alone go all the way to the conference finals. I mean, and it's a whole different atmosphere than just, coasting through the regular season. Granted, LeBron's been there. He went to, what, 4 straight finals? And,
Yeah.
he's been there before. And then you also have to take into consideration a rookie coach, David Blatt. Now, I think he's going to be a fine coach in this league. I like what he's done, what I've seen in the summer league and the preseason. I like what I've seen. But he is a rookie coach. And, it's not often where you see a rookie coach, almost like take his team that far or be able to put his team in the best position, but he's never been there before. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I feel you, but you look at it this way. Blatt's got a great reputation. Everybody in the NBA knew it. Everybody, you with me? Can you hear me? Everybody in the NBA knew about him. I know he was coaching over in Israel. He did a lot of coaching, in Russia, Europe, blah, blah, blah. He's always done very well, won several championships. But think about it. I'm not high on Mike Brown. I'm not. When LeBron was there, it was LeBron's team, not Mike Brown's team, LeBron's team.
Yeah.
He took Pavlovich, Boobie Gibson, and Big Z to the finals. Come on. Of course he didn't win, but he put them on his back, And if he can do that with those guys, certainly Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love can figure it out. There's just too much talent there not to. The only ego I would worry about getting involved is Dion Waiters. And if LeBron can't put him in check, they'll get rid of him. It's pretty simple. Their biggest thing is the whole rim protector situation, But, you got to outscore them to beat them. And they're going to put a lot of points on the board.
Yeah, and the 2 biggest stats that I usually look for in a team success is rebounding and turnovers. Now, this team's going to rebound. Whenever you have Kevin Love in your front line, you're going to rebound along with LeBron. And, they're going to create turnovers. They're not going to turn the ball over because, LeBron's very efficient handling the ball, running an offense, along with Kyrie. And the one thing that I do question is their shot blocking. Now, I think that's going to hurt them as, in Miami in the finals. They have any shot blockers. They had no rim protectors, just like you said. And, that's going to be the big question, especially since you have Derrick Rose coming in, driving the lane. Now, who do you have that's going to, create havoc down low? Even if it's just, changing the course of his shot, making them change it, who's going to do their job? And LeBron, sometimes he's too tentative on the defensive end. He has a habit of taking a few plays off on the defensive end.
It's gotten worse over the years, man. He can't do that with this team. He cannot do that with this team. He won't get away with it, I'm telling you.
And rarely do I ever see him going up with somebody to contest a block or a layup. Rarely do I see that. Most of his flies come off of chase downs on a fast break.
Unless it's Thiago Splitter. Yeah, you don't see it very often.
Yeah. And that was a cheap one, too, because it's split.
It was. He was losing it. It was bogus, dude. It was bogus.
And that's ultimately that reasoning alone is going to be the reason why I picked Chicago over them. This is due to the fact that Cleveland has no rim protectors. Now, at least Chicago, you have Joakim Noah who can, he can bang down low defensively. And then Pau Gasol's length is going to create some problems for Cleveland. And then
it's not Carlos Boozer, man. It's not Carlos Boozer.
No. And then you have Naz Muhammad who can defend down low. He's still a capable defender. He can still protect the rim too.
He's got 6 fouls, man. He's got 6 fouls.
Exactly. And so I think Chicago's going to come out, and I don't think they're going to win though, because for the East, or not for the East, but for the West, even though that's going to be a whole different segment, I think it's going to be either San Antonio, OKC, or the Clippers coming out the West. And
That's
I
what
don't
I've
see,
been saying too.
and I don't see Chicago beating them. They just don't have enough. You know, San Antonio, we saw what they did last year. OKC, they have Durant and Russ. And then the Clippers, you have Chris Paul, Blake Griffin. Like, that's going to be too much for Chicago. And, you know, it's just progress, though. The East is taking a step in the right direction.
I
You know, it's
believe
not
so
as
too.
bad as it's not as bad as it was last year.
No, it was bad.
Now, I'm gonna make a bold prediction, and I'm gonna say that every playoff team in the East finishes 500. That's a bold prediction for me this year.
It's possible. It's possible.
Yeah,
I mean, it is if you compare it. I mean, it's bold comparing it to last year, but it is possible.
yeah,
I can ride with that. So Detroit's got to step their game up. Though I've
yeah.
got them at 8, and they are the ones that to be a fringe. I'm not sold on Brooklyn or New York, man.
Yeah.
You can have your Nets, man. I ain't having it. I ain't having it.
It's just, and the Southeast Division, man, that's probably the second best division behind the Southwest, in my opinion, at least. Because the Southwest, you have San Antonio, you have New Orleans, Dallas, Houston. I mean, that's three,
It's pretty
four
nasty.
potential playoff teams in a division.
Yeah.
And in the Southeast, any of the top four teams can win a division. Atlanta can win it. Charlotte, Miami, Washington, either one of them can win it.
Yeah.
And ultimately, what's going to come down to is who can stay healthy down the stretch heading into the playoffs. Who can stay healthy? You know,
Yep.
and I think that's the big picture for every team that's looking to contend for the championship is if they can stay healthy. You know, I know that's hurt OKC the past couple of years. You have 1 year, you have Russ out, and then you had Ibaka out for a long stretch in the playoffs. And
That was the determiner right there. That's
yeah,
what cost them.
and when the Spurs got knocked out by Memphis, Ginobili wasn't healthy. He was playing with a fractured elbow, and he wasn't the Ginobili he was. And I thought that hurt them a lot because if he's healthy, that series isn't. I don't think Memphis wins that series, but it goes down to maybe 7 games. And it's just. I mean, who can stay healthy down the stretch? I mean, who can show that who's going to show that they're for real? You know, it's going to be the year where we dictate who's the contenders, who's the pretenders.
Yeah.
Basically.
All I care is the ACL issue. I can't have all these stars falling apart on me, man. Breaks my basketball heart, man. Can't have that this year. Do something about it, Commissioner. Do something about it. Anyways, but it'll be interesting, man.
Yeah.
A lot more parity in the East, and
Oh,
I still think the winner comes out of the West, but we'll follow up on that shortly enough.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw, but it was a preseason game, and Derrick Rose went down, and the whole bench ran towards him.
Was that on the baseline? I think
Yeah.
I remember seeing that. Yeah.
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 I
They
thought
know
that was
what
pretty
he
funny.
means. They know what he means. I try not to think about it too much. It's hard not to as a Bulls fan.
Yeah.
And if you want me to be dead honest with you, when he went down last year, first thing out of my mouth was, I hope it's a meniscus. I hope it's a meniscus. Luckily enough, it was. But they went the right route. They didn't have it removed. He's going to bounce back better. You're not looking at arthritis setting in as early. Ask Dwayne Wade how that goes. He had his removed. He took the quick route. I had the surgery this past summer. It's just not the same. You know what I'm saying? It hurts some days it doesn't. These guys that put themselves through way more than I do. I can only imagine what they feel like. But they got the best people in the world taking care of them. Derek's looked great. He looks a lot more measured. He doesn't look like he's going Mach 3 all the time, not knowing where his body's taking him. His shots looked really good in the preseason, believe it or not. He's actually looked really good from distance. So many X factors. We could talk forever on it. But I got my boys in Chicago coming out, man. And let's hope that I'm right. I'm not being a homer. If Cleveland beats them, I'm not surprised. But I just think we're too deep, man. I like our front court depth too much. And Derek's the X factor. Kyrie can't guard him, dude. He can't guard a healthy Derrick Rose.
Yeah, I agree with you on the Chicago pick. like I said, the biggest stats I look at when I'm looking at a team contending for a championship: rebounding, turnovers, and block shots. You got to be able to rebound to create more opportunity for yourself and limit your opponent's opportunities. You have to take care of the ball. Keep the more athletic teams out of transition. You know, and block shots. I mean, you have to be able to protect the rim, man. You gotta hold it down low, and that's what hurt Miami last year. I mean, they were an average at most rebounding team. No shot blockers. They took care of the ball, but I mean, when they went up against a good defensive team, they had their struggles. When you didn't have, how can I explain it? Like against the Spurs, I thought Kawhi Leonard did a tremendous job guarding LeBron. He
Hmm.
got up in his face. He made him uncomfortable, and
Sure.
and then he had LeBron with his acting skills, if you want to call those. and
He's
you
not going
know,
to win an Oscar anytime soon. I'll tell you that.
uh, no, and yeah, once they played against a great defensive team, that's where their true colors showed. I mean, Chalmers, he wasn't comfortable the whole series. Wade wasn't Wade. They dared him to shoot, and that's saying a lot, considering the fact that he's always been a good mid-range shooter his whole career. And LeBron, I mean, you're going to dare him to shoot every time. Granted, he's a better
Sure.
jump shooter than he was, 11 years ago, but you're still going to dare him to shoot. I know. I mean, if I'm guarding him, I'm daring him to shoot.
Sure.
And now, the one guy I'm not daring to shoot is Ray Allen, but luckily he had a bad series.
Yeah, he's got to decide if he wants to work now, which,
Yeah,
whatever. I mean, if you want to work, you want to work. But it's not looking like he's coming back. If he does, he'll end up in Cleveland somehow. So they're
yeah.
still lacking front court depth. So it's whatever.
And
Add an
his
old
role's gonna
Ray
be
Allen to the
limited too.
mix.
Yeah, he's gonna have a very limited role too because he can't create his own shot anymore. So a lot of his shots are gonna come off of screens, pin downs. He's gonna be a spot up shooter. He's not a good defender anymore. I mean, he can't
He's a
defend.
hack. I tell you what, watch that guy play defense. He plays more with I swear to goodness, he plays more with his hands than anybody in the league, and they let him get away. It drives me nuts. I scream at the TV all the time. I can't take it. I can't take. Stay out. Stay retired, Ray. I don't
Yeah,
like it.
I could have sworn handshaking's illegal now. I mean,
Ugh, he does it
last time
his
I
way.
checked,
Yeah,
and
he does more of the forearm shaking. It's not the handshake. It's the forearm shake. He's
yeah,
terrible, man.
yeah.
Anyways, but it'll be interesting, man.
Oh
Looking
yeah.
forward to it. Tuesday night, starting this off, and as long as I beat you in fantasy, it's a good day for me.
I don't see that happening. I'm very confident in my team.
I,
Very
li- I like all
confident.
my squads, so we'll see
Yeah.
how it goes.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to a great season. I hope the Stars can stay healthy because it makes it that much better.
It
And
does. Kobe's back. Rondo will be back shortly. Derek's back. It's good. It's good. It's good
yeah,
times, man.
it's better for the league. I mean, it
Oh,
makes it more
absolutely.
fun. Makes it more fun. And is there anything else you would like to add before we wrap this up?
No, just go Bulls. Don't let me down. And George Carl, keep the phone ready. We're looking for you.
Right. And I would like to end the show on sending. Earlier today, there news was received that Cardinals outfielder Oscar Taveras was killed in a car accident in his home country of the Dominican Republic. And the Pro Sports Extra family would like to give our thoughts and prayers to his family in their time of grief. It's tough, man. I thought he was gonna be a really good player. I loved watching him play. It's a shame. It's tough. I mean, we send our condolences out to his family. I mean, I couldn't imagine what they're going through right now, to be honest. Yeah, yeah, I hope you enjoyed our first show. Um, we will have another show soon, maybe next weekend, depending on the time. But I have fun. I mean, better
It's
than
always
expected.
It's
I mean,
yeah, it probably stretched. I haven't even seen what the time was on this, but it's always good to talk basketball with you. It's always good to talk to someone that's got a love of the game, understanding the game. Obviously you're playing at the collegiate effort, level. You know something about the game. I've been watching it forever. I've been a rabid fan forever. I read, I watch. I'm old. It helps. Whatever. So, anyways, I love it, man, and I look forward to talking to you. We'll talk about, maybe the first week of the season and kind of the spin off how we think the West is going to shake out.
Yes, sir. And you can read our articles at prospectsextra.com. We provide the best stuff out there. Not being biased, but
Not at all.
yeah, but it's honest. We bring the truth. No PC. It's every man for himself. And we hope to see you guys next time. Hope you enjoyed.
See you guys later.